All right. Next up, we have our third keynote of the day, which will be delivered by Cameron Chell and Ed Moy. Cameron, as you probably know, is the founder and chairman of ICOX Innovations and also the co-creator and architect of Kodak Coin. Ed is the board member at ICOX Innovations, and then he is also the 38th director of the U.S. Mint. Would you all please join me in welcoming them both to the stage?
Thank you very much for allowing us to be up here today. My name is Cameron Chell. Thank you for the great introduction. Pleasure to be the co-founder and chairman of ICOX Innovations. And our whole talk today is all about adoption. So, you know, we're Web 1.0 folks, and so we lived through the highs and the lows, and we realized that really when it came down to it, it was all about who was getting adoption. And in terms of currency adoption, we thought there would probably be no better person to set the standard and the groundwork than the 38th director of the U.S. Mint to talk about really what does it take for a currency to be adopted. Yeah. Ed?
Thanks. Thanks, Cam, for that generous introduction, and I really appreciate the applause when we first came out, but admittedly, when I was director of the Mint, I was used to much louder applause because of all the free samples I was able to give afterwards. Seriously, if you ever get a chance to become director of the Mint, do it, because my cred with my dad increased like 1,000%. He said, finally, my son, he has a job where he makes a lot of money. Now, I tried that on Warren Buffett at a reception I was at, and Warren Buffett, without missing a beat, started laughing, and he said, yes, son, but none of it's yours. So, a little bit of audience participation. How many of you are producing tokens or coins that exceed the worldwide acceptance of the US dollar? Raise your hand. Okay, so I made the dollar, so I have a little unique perspective to add. How many of you would like your token or coin to have mainstream acceptance like the US dollar? Raise your hand. Okay, all right, so given that, I want to share with you how the US dollar became the world's reserve currency and what 3 lessons that you can take away to make your coin or token adopted in that fashion. So picture this, 1944, it was close, the beginning of the end of World War II. And a lot of thinking was being done on what was going to happen in the future. So the finance ministers of 44 countries gathered in Bretton Woods to figure out a new monetary system. And what they're trying to do is, number one, solve a problem, a real-world problem. And the real-world problem was, prior to World War II, the world was on a gold standard. But it couldn't exist on a gold standard during war because you just can't print all the money you want because you didn't have all the gold you needed to back that money. So everyone went off the gold standard, printed a whole ton of money to fund the war, and now, when the war ends, there's not enough gold to back all the money. Problem number one. Problem number two is the only economy that was still relatively intact with a huge industrial machine was the United States. So everybody wanted dollars to buy US goods. So when these finance ministers got together in Bretton Woods, what did they figure out was a solution to a real world problem? It was to have the United States base its currency on gold, and all the other countries would base their currency on the United States dollar. And that's how it became the world's reserve currency. Second issue was, before that, when you had the gold standard, gold enforced a certain regulatory system. As long as everybody believed that gold had value and it was worth, at the time, $20 an ounce, then you knew what all the other currencies were worth to each other. But now that you had this de facto gold exchange standard, how would you figure that out? So the ministers decided that the best way to do it was to have world regulation, which ended up creating institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, as well as a system of exchange rates. So regulation was critical to the US dollar being adopted worldwide as the reserve currency. And third, all 44 members basically representing all the developed economies in the world, agreed to adopt the system. And so it wasn't each country trying to sell it one-on-one to consumers that this was the best way of doing things. It was mass adoption through a network effect by getting all 44 countries to sign and buy in and make it successful. So as you think about how your token or coin will get mainstream adoption, I would focus on these three things. Number one, focus on solving a real-world problem that gets rid of the negative reputation that cryptocurrency has. Number two, become regulatory compliant, even if that means self-regulation in a regulatory environment that's not settled yet. And number three, do whatever you can to build relationships to accelerate adoption by a large number of people. Because once you get that critical mass, it then becomes very common. So in order to give you a real-world example of that, I'm going to ask Cam to come back up and talk a little bit about what ICOX is doing with these three principles.
Amazing. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah.
You know, we are so lucky at ICOX to have Ed, you know, who's one of the, you know, the premier, you know, government executives who have bought into this industry and are supporting all of us. Ed has also been able to allow us to attract people like Peter Diamandis to our team, Steve Beauregard, Alfonso Jackson, who's the former vice chair of JP Morgan Chase and current director of First Data, sorry. I mean, these are the types of people that are really getting behind this whole space. So those three principles that Ed talked about, we've taken to heart. And this is what we use when we work with organizations to create adoption of the currencies that we work with. So our first project that we came out with was Kodak One. And so, you know, really, why Kodak One and why is it important and how do these three principles involved with it? So first of all, it's a great brand, it's a trusted brand, and so that's the area where, you know, where those 44 nations said, hey, we all need to believe in something and agree. So we went to Kodak and we said, listen, you've got an incredible user base of photographers and trusted community. We want to build on that to build a rights management platform that people can monetize and creators can actually start to get paid for what they're worth, you know, in basically the digital decimation that happened for content creators. And so what we've done there is, I'll just give you a quick example. So today, our post-licensing platform goes live. So it was a year ago at CES, or coming up on a year ago at CES, that we announced that we were going to do the Kodak coin. You know, the stock at Kodak went crazy. We got all kinds of criticism around, you know, why do you need a coin and why do you know, and what we were really focused on is understanding these three principles and first building a product that there was a real world need for. And today we launched that product, and here's an example, and we've got lots and lots of examples, but here's an example of how that product works. How many people have seen this picture, right? So a very well-known picture that came up, about 2.5 billion, this is a polar bear, I believe it was northern Canada, might have been Alaska, that was a photographer took, got worldwide, 2.5 billion people have seen this image. They were able to do 50 commercial licensed uses of this image. And like humanly, you can't really get more than 50 licenses going in a short time. What we've done system and crawl the web and the internet and find out all of the usage, authorized or unauthorized, and then has an automated system that goes in and then actually turns those infringers into licensors for that digital artist. And the smart contract then follows all the post-license usage of this digital image and provides instant payment. With the scale of imagery and digital assets today, like, you know, 2.5 billion views of this, you're never going to be able, without smart contracts and without a blockchain, you're not going to be able to do post-license management. So this is a real-world, to Ed's first point, of a problem that needed to be solved. And it doesn't just use blockchain, and it doesn't just use coins. It also uses AI, and it uses web crawlers and a bunch of other things. But it's a very elegant solution that wouldn't work, or wouldn't work as well, without blockchain and without AI. The second thing that we wanted to talk about quick today is BitRail. So we just announced this literally probably 15 or 20 minutes ago. So BitRail is a crypto payment platform that's fully integrated into the banking system and has all its appropriate money transmitter licenses just before it goes live. It already has a major customer with 4 million wallets that will be deploying on this system. One of the things that a lot of us in the industry probably don't really grasp or have a handle on is that if our tokens or coins are transferring value outside of our own little network, we need money transmitter licenses. We need payment rails. We don't need to think and worry just about SEC regulations. We've also got to be thinking about FINRA regulations. And so we believe, anyway, and test the time we'll see, is that this will be the first fully integrated banking and licensed and compliant crypto system that other coins can actually launch on and be integrated with fiats today. This is another example of a real-world problem, and we brought it to a customer who has an adopted audience already, so those 44 nations. And it's these types of things that we believe will help encourage and drive adoption in the industry. We get a lot of startups, we get a lot of people coming to us with amazing, amazing ideas. And I don't want to discourage anybody from doing those things, but the large brands that we are working with, we're really going to them and saying, listen, I don't care if a startup has the greatest idea in the world, or it doesn't. If we can't do something to really ensure that adoption is going to happen first, then the rest of the great ideas out there that don't have adoption and really require a whole bunch of faith to jump on with are going to fall flat. So if there's anything that we can encourage here today is really focus on that adoption. And at ICOX, there's tons more things we'd love to talk to you about today, but we do have a booth here, and we got lots of representatives around. We'd love to hear lots of ideas, especially if you're a big brand. And if you're not, we'd love to hear the ideas because we have a lot of big brands out there that are looking for ways to increase adoption, either reduce costs or get customer traction. And a lot of people in this room actually have the technology or the insights to be able to do that for those big brands. So on that note, I'm going to hopefully we did a pretty good job of helping things get back on time. Really appreciate the support. Thank you very much to Start Engine, and in particular, thank you very much to Ed Moy.
Thanks.